By the end of this afternoon, a department head in a major tech hub will receive a performance report that has nothing to do with her team's results. It is a cost-to-output audit generated by an autonomous system that has concluded her entire division is no longer a strategic asset. She is earning $200,000 a year. She is in the top 5% of global earners. And yet, in the eyes of the 2026 economy, she is functionally obsolete. If you are still operating under the belief that being the best employee in the building is your primary shield against the volatility of the world, then you are standing on a fault line that has already begun to shift. The traditional career is not just dying. It is being systematically dismantled. For 80 years, the deal was simple. You trade your loyalty and your 40 best hours for a steady paycheck that allows you to fund a predictable life. But in the landscape of 2026, a salary is no longer a foundation. It is a high-risk bond with a single payer and an instant termination clause. We are living through the exit velocity gap, a period where the traditional definitions of professional safety have become the most efficient tools of extraction used against the middle and upper middle class. Look at your professional identity right now. If 100% of your income is tied to a single firm, you aren't an expert. You are a renter of your own time, and the landlord just changed the locks. The common belief is that income is the ultimate cure for financial stress. But the data from this year reveals that households earning six figures are reporting higher levels of daily anxiety than those earning half that amount. It isn't a lack of effort problem. It is a navigation problem. You have been trained to build a mountain of asset mass, while the 2026 economy only rewards asset velocity. Today, we are performing a forensic audit of the corporate trap. I'm going to show you the 5 specific moves that separate the sovereign operators from the professional hostages. These aren't suggestions to start a side hustle or buy a generic budget template. This is the core architecture of a sovereign operating system for a world where the secure job has become a single point of failure. If you ignore these shifts, your high salary will eventually become irrelevant. But if you apply these 5 moves, you stop being a passenger in the economic machine and start becoming the sole architect of your own destiny. Move number 1. Break the single-payer monopoly. Most professionals view their salary as property, but in strict financial terms, a paycheck is merely a conditional cash flow. In the investment world, nobody would put their entire capital into a single stock of a single company. Yet that is exactly what the average worker does with their most valuable asset, their ability to generate income. In 2026, having one source of income is the financial equivalent of flying a plane with no landing gear. You are fine as long as you stay in the air, but the moment the engine of that specific corporation stutters, you have zero margin for error. Reclaiming your sovereignty starts with understanding that your salary is not income. It is a loan from your employer that can be recalled without notice. The gap between your current lifestyle and a total financial heart attack is measured by your survival runway. If you were to walk away from your primary firm today, how many months could your liquid, accessible capital sustain your current standard of living? For many professionals earning $200,000 a year, the answer is a devastating fraction, often less than 90 days. They have built an aircraft carrier, but have no fuel to keep it afloat without a daily supply from the corporation. To survive the death of the career, your first objective is to diversify your income streams until your job is merely one client in a portfolio of professional assets. The illusion of safety in a high salary is what I call the six-figure mirage. It is a psychological trap where as your income climbs, the floor of your requirements rises even faster, leaving you exactly where you started, just with more expensive toys and significantly higher stakes. Research from early 2026 indicates that households earning $150,000 are now reporting higher levels of daily financial strain than those earning $75,000. This is because more money simply provides a larger stage for existing habits to play out on a grander scale. If you are a spender at $50,000, you will be a massive spender at $500,000. The trap does not care about the size of your paycheck. It only cares about the gap between what you earn and what you keep. Move number 2. Transition from a renter of your time to an owner of your output. For decades, we have been taught to trade our best 40 hours for a steady paycheck, and to consider that security. But a salary is simply the rent a company pays to occupy your life. And just like any rental agreement, The landlord can terminate at the moment they find a cheaper alternative or a more efficient piece of code. True safety in 2026 is found in the possession of the tools of production, not in the promise of a corner office. You must shift your focus toward professional equity, assets that belong to you regardless of who signs your payroll or what title appears on your profile. These assets are your specialized intellectual property, your private network of relationships, and your personal brand of authority within a specific industry. If you are a manager, your salary is the rent, but your professional equity is the unique management methodology you have perfected that can be applied to any firm in the world. In an age dominated by mass automation, the only things that will retain value are those that cannot be easily replicated by an employer. You have to ask yourself every single day, am I building my boss's kingdom, or am I building my own sovereign infrastructure? If you leave your position tomorrow, what exactly do you take with you? If the answer is only a box of personal effects and a collection of unused vacation days, you have been selling your life for a fraction of its true value. Consider the case of Clara and David, two professionals working in the same office tower. Both earned $160,000 a year, drove late-model vehicles, and lived in apartments that reflected their success. To an outside observer, they were financial twins. But David saw his salary as a fortress, dedicating all his mental energy to the firm, convinced his loyalty was his best insurance policy. Clara, however, saw her salary as a high-risk asset. She understood that a paycheck is actually a financial bond with a single payer and an instant termination clause. While David slept soundly trusting his payroll, Clara spent her mornings building a safety net that did not depend on the approval of a human resources director. When a restructuring driven by new technology eliminated their entire department, the cash flow for both dropped to zero in a single afternoon. For David, this was a disaster. Within 48 hours, his lifestyle became a trap of fixed costs he could no longer feed. His identity crumbled along with his balance. For Clara, it was simply a signal to execute her secondary plan. She was not happy about losing her role, but she was not afraid either. She was an investor of her own time who had just freed up her most valuable resource. The difference between them was not luck. It was the accumulation of small decisions that separated the renter from the owner. Move number 3. Establish the 48-hour liquidity floor. Most people measure their success by their total net worth, the big number at the bottom of the statement. They look at their home equity, their locked retirement accounts, and their personal assets, and they feel safe. But in the landscape of 2026, the quality of your wealth is becoming infinitely more important than the quantity. This is because the world is no longer interested in how much you own. It is interested in how much of it you can actually move. If your wealth is frozen, you are a spectator. You watch the world change, and you see the opportunities pass you by because you cannot reach the lever. To reclaim your velocity, you must stop looking at your total balance as a measure of safety and start looking at your survival runway in a zero-income environment. This means having at least 2 years of your essential survival number sitting in high-yield, totally liquid accounts. This is not dead money. It is a psychological shield. It is the premium you pay for the power to say no to things that do not serve you and yes to the high asymmetry opportunities that appear during a crisis. In a decade defined by rapid shifts, liquidity is the only real form of courage. The fourth move is the strategic defense of your extraction point. In the financial engineering of the 2026 economy, there is a specific income range that the system is designed to harvest with surgical precision. It is the zone between $250,000 and $750,000 a year. On the surface, this looks like the pinnacle of professional achievement. This is the bracket of senior directors, specialized consultants, and successful small business owners. But if you look closer at the math, you will see that this is the extraction zone, the point where your cost of maintenance, your tax obligations, and your social expectations are engineered to consume almost every dollar of your increased output. The system loves a high earner who spends like a high earner. This is why the financial industry and the marketing machinery of modern life are so invested in your promotion. A $50,000 raise is not a gift from the corporation. It is a lure to get you to lock in a new level of fixed costs. You buy the larger home in the better school district, which leads to higher property taxes, higher insurance premiums, and a social circle where the baseline for a normal vacation is now $10,000. Before you have even received your first increased paycheck, the economy has already found a way to extract it. You are running faster, but the treadmill has been tilted upward. To survive this move, you must adopt a philosophy of strategic underliving. This doesn't mean being frugal for the sake of suffering. It means intentionally disconnecting your lifestyle from your income so that your wealth can actually accumulate in the dark. If you are earning $500,000 but living as if you earned $200,000, you are effectively invisible to the extraction machinery. You have built a fortress of capital that the system cannot easily touch. But the moment you allow your lifestyle to mirror your title, you have handed the keys to your sovereignty over to the bank, the tax collector, and the neighborhood association. The death of the career is only a tragedy for those who are over-leveraged against their own labor. For the person who has defended their extraction point, a layoff is not an end. It is a liquidity event. It is the moment where your suppressed lifestyle turns into a massive, portable advantage. Move number 5 is the transition to the sovereign skill arbitrage. We are entering the era of the great leveler, where traditional credentials like an Ivy League MBA or 20 years at a Fortune 500 firm are losing their value as defensive moats. In 2026, software is not just replacing repetitive tasks, it is replacing mid-level judgment. The roles that are being deleted most aggressively are the synthesizers, the people whose job is to attend meetings, summarize information, and manage the flow of work. If your value is tied to a process that someone else owns, you are a liability on a balance sheet waiting to be optimized. To counter this, you must pivot your professional identity toward portable arbitrage. This means identifying skills that are high leverage, platform independent, and difficult for a generalized model to replicate. These are things like high-stakes negotiation, complex system architecture, and deep human influence. A sovereign operator does not look for a job. They look for a problem that is costing a firm millions of dollars, and they offer a specific, high-velocity solution. You are no longer an employee with a salary. You are a specialist with a fee. The difference is subtle but fundamental. An employee is a cost to be managed. A specialist with a fee is an investment to be leveraged. This shift requires you to stop thinking about your career as a ladder and start thinking about it as a portfolio of experiments. The goal is no longer to climb to the top of a single organization, but to build a network of dependencies that rely on your unique output. If you are the only person who can solve a specific, painful problem for 5 different companies, you are infinitely more secure than the executive who manages 500 people at one company. The executive is one board meeting away from being redundant. You, however, are a critical component of 5 different engines. You have decentralized your risk and centralized your value. The death of the career is only the death of the default career, the one where you follow the rules, work the hours, and hope the system takes care of you in the end. That deal is gone, and it isn't coming back. But for the person who is willing to look at the math, accept the reality of the 2026 reset, and build a sovereign operating system, this is the most opportunistic era in history. The extraction machinery only works on those who are asleep. The moment you wake up to the game, you can start playing by a different set of rules. Esto nos leva al concepto de la cartera ágil. La mayoría de los consejos financieros se basan en la idea de la acumulación. Reunir tanto capital como si posible y guardarlo en cuentas que no puedes tocar hasta los 65 años. Pero en un mundo donde tu carrera puede ser barata por una actualización de software, ese dinero es efectivamente inútil para ti en el momento en que más lo necesitas. Eres como una persona atrapada en una habitación cerrada con una montaña de oro, pero sin la llave de la puerta. Para sobrevivir al reinicio de 2026, debes cambiar tu enfoque de la masa de activos a la velocidad de los activos. La velocidad es la rapidez con la que tu capital puede desplegarse para resolver un problema o capturar una oportunidad. Piensa en la diferencia entre Julián y Elena. Julián hizo todo lo que el sistema tradicional lo dijo que hiciera. Maximizo sus contributions a sus cuentas de jubilación con impuestos diferidos. Pago su hipoteca y mantuvo sus ahorros en una cuenta estándar con una tasa de interés baja. Para cuando tenía 45 años, su patrimonio neto parecía impresionante en el papel. Pero cuando su industria experimentó un cambio estructural masivo, y su puesto fue eliminado, SEDIO, cuenta de que el 90% de su riqueza era intocable. No podía usar su plan de jubilación sin multas masivas, y el valor líquido de su vivienda estaba atrapado en un mercado que se había enfriado repentinamente. Era millonario en un balance, pero estaba quebrado en la vida real. Se vio obligado a aceptar un trabajo peor pagado solo para cumplir con sus obligations mensuales, comenzando efectivamente su carrera de nuevo desde una posición de debilidad. Elena, sin embargo, entendió la importancia de la velocidad. Si bien también ahorraba y invertía, se aseguró de que una parte significativa de su riqueza se mantuviera en lo que llamamos una reserva soberana. Se trataba de capital mantenido en instrumentos liquidos de alto rendimiento a los que podía acceder en 48 horas sin penalización. No veía su hipoteca como una deuda que debía eliminarse lo más rápido posible. La veía como un apalancamiento de bajo costo que le permitía mantener una mayor parte de su efectivo trabajando para ella en el mercado. Cuando su empresa se reestructuró, Elena no entró en pánico. Pasó 6 meses viajando y evaluando el mercado, y eventualmente utilizó su capital líquido para comprar una participación en una pequeña consultoria de alto crecimiento donde se convirtió en socia. Su riqueza no era solo un número, era un motor de opcionalidad. El sistema operativo soberano requiere que te conviertas en tu propio banco central. Debes gestionar tu capital con el mismo desapego clínico que utiliza un gestor de fondos de cobertura. Esto significa auditar constantemente tu ratio de liquidez. La relación entre tus gastos mensuales y tu efectivo accesible y sin penalizations. Si tu ratio es bajo, eres frágil. Si tu ratio es alto, eres antifrágil. El objetivo es construir una vida donde ningún evento externo único, ya sea un desplome del mercado, un despido corporativo o una crisis de salud, pueda obligarte a tomar una decisión por desesperación. La desesperación es la emoción más cara en el mundo financiero. Conduce malas operations, préstamos predatorios y el sacrificio de la riqueza a largo plazo por la supervivencia a corto plazo. Para lograr esto, también debes dominar la psicología del punto de extracción que discutimos anteriormente. La razón por la que la mayoría de las personas no logran generar velocidad es porque están demasiado ocupadas alimentando la maquinaria de su propio estilo de vida. Compran la prueba social de la riqueza, los autos, las casas, la ropa, mientras sacrifican la sustancia real de la riqueza. Están llegando un juego de estatus, mientras que el operator soberano está llegando un juego de libertad. En la economía de 2026, el estatus es un activo que se deprecia. La libertad, sin embargo, es el único activo que se capitaliza más rápido que la inflación. Tienes que decidir a qué juego estás llegando. Si juegas por el estatus, la muerte de la carrera es una sentencia de muerte. Si juegas por la libertad, es el comienzo de tu mayor expansión. Esto requiere una honestidad radical sobre lo que realmente necesitas para ser feliz frente a lo que te indica que necesitas para tener éxito. La mayoría de los costos en la vida de alguien que gana mucho no tienen que ver con la comodidad. Tienen que ver con mantener una imagen. Cuando despojas la imagen, revelas la verdadera arquitectura de tus finanzas. Te das cuenta de que puedes vivir una vida de alta calidad y profundamente satisfactoria con una fracción de lo que el sistema dice que necesitas. Y esa brecha, ese margen protegido, Es donde vive tu soberania. Es el combustible de tu velocidad. Es la razón por la que puedes entrar en una habitación y saber que eres la persona más poderosa allí. No porque tengas el título más alto, sino porque eres el único que no necesita estar allí. This transition leads us directly into the mechanics of move number 5, the execution of the sovereign arbitrage. In the legacy economy, value was tied to tenure and the ability to navigate a specific corporate hierarchy. You were rewarded for knowing where the bodies were buried and who to call to get a budget approved. But in the 2026 reset, the navigator role is the first to be automated. When software can map every process, summarize every meeting, and optimize every supply chain, the person whose only skill is knowing the system becomes a massive, unnecessary overhead. To survive this shift, you must pivot your identity from a company man to a sovereign specialist. A sovereign specialist doesn't look for a job description that fits their history. They look for a structural inefficiency that fits their unique cognitive profile. They operate like a high-end surgeon or a specialized legal architect. They aren't on the payroll to work. They are there to solve a high-stakes problem that the automated systems cannot yet comprehend. This is where you move from a cost center to a profit multiplier. If the company pays you $200,000, but your presence prevents a $10 million system failure, you are the cheapest asset they own. That is the only real job security left in the world. Consider the contrast between Marcus and Sarah. Marcus spent 20 years climbing the ladder at a global logistics firm. He was a master of their internal politics, their proprietary software, and their specific culture. He was a synthesizer. When the firm integrated an advanced coordination engine in early 2026, 80% of Marcus's daily utility vanished. The software could synthesize information faster, more accurately, and without a salary. Because Marcus's skills were platform-dependent, meaning they only worked inside that specific building, he had zero leverage when the layoffs began. He was a generalist in a world that had just perfected the generalist algorithm. Sarah, however, was an architect. She worked in the same industry, but she focused on the high-entropy problems that software struggles to solve. High-stakes international negotiation and the psychological integration of merged teams. These are skills of portable arbitrage. They aren't tied to a specific firm's software. They are tied to her own cognitive output. When the reset hit, Sarah didn't wait for a severance package. She realized that 5 other firms were struggling with the exact same integration problems. She stopped being an employee and became a consultant to 3 of them simultaneously. Her income tripled, but more importantly, her risk was now decentralized. If one client left, she still had 2 others. She was no longer a victim of a corporate decision. She was the commander of her own professional portfolio. This shift requires a fundamental re-engineering of your professional ego. Most people are addicted to the prestige of their title and the size of the team they manage. They derive their sense of worth from the logo on their business card. But in 2026, that logo is a cage. The sovereign operator understands that a title is a lagging indicator of past success, not a guarantee of future safety. You must be willing to trade the safety of the corporate umbrella for the certainty of your own output. This means building what I call a dependency network. You don't want a team that reports to you. You want a network of high-value entities that depend on you. When you are the node that connects critical resources, you don't need a corner office to have power. You have power because the system cannot function at peak efficiency without your specific contribution. This brings us to the ultimate realization of the 2026 reset. The extraction machinery we discussed, the taxes, the lifestyle inflation, the debt traps, it all relies on you being afraid. It relies on the fear that if you lose your primary salary, your life ends. But once you have implemented the first 4 moves, once you have the liquidity floor, the diversified income, the protected extraction point, and the portable skills, the fear disappears. And when the fear disappears, the system loses its hold on you. You are no longer a professional hostage negotiating for a slightly better sell. You are a sovereign individual who has opted out of the death of the career and opted into the birth of the autonomous life. The system operative for this new era is not built on complexity. It is built on the ruthless application of simple math and the psychological courage to be different. It is about recognizing that the middle-class dream of 20th century safety has become the 21st century's most dangerous liability. The people who will thrive in the next decade are not the ones who work the hardest to stay in the burning building. They are the ones who recognized the smoke early, jumped, and had already built their own parachute. This leads us to the final point of this transformation, the shift in identity toward total sovereignty. We have spent decades defining ourselves by our position on an organizational chart, by the prestige of a logo, or by the supposed security of a bi-weekly paycheck. But the 2026 reset has made it clear that those are anchors, not life rafts. True security does not come from a company needing you. It comes from you not needing any specific company. When you apply these 5 moves, breaking the single-payer monopoly, owning your production, establishing a 48-hour liquidity floor, protecting your extraction point, and pivoting toward the arbitrage of portable skills, what you are actually building is an emergency exit from the system of dependency. You are ceasing to be a professional hostage to become a sovereign operator. You are no longer at the mercy of a human resources algorithm or a shift in a board of directors strategy. You are the architect of your own financial infrastructure. The death of the traditional career is not something to be feared if you are prepared. In fact, it is the greatest liberation event of our generation. The old model demanded that you sacrifice your present for the promise of a future that the system can no longer guarantee. The new model, the sovereign operating system, demands that you take control of your present so that your future is a choice, not a consequence of luck or corporate benevolence. It is not an easy path. It requires the discipline to live below your means while others flaunt their status. It requires the courage to learn new skills when the world tells you that you have already reached the peak. And it requires the patience to build a liquidity engine, dollar by dollar. But the result is a life that cannot be canceled. A life where work is an expression of your value, not a struggle for your survival. So, here's where we land. The 2026 reset is already here. The floor is moving beneath everyone's feet, but you now have the map. You have the rules. You have the system. The only question that remains is whether you are willing to execute it. Are you ready to stop being a passenger and start being the commander? Which move seems the hardest for you to implement right now? Is it the liquidity, the diversification, or the ego required to let go of your corporate title? Leave it in the comments. You would be surprised how many people are dealing with the exact same thing, and starting the conversation is the first step toward breaking the trap. Thank you for watching. Remember, in this new world, information is useful, but sovereignty is freedom. Until next time.